means for personal business. So the White House, here's what we think happened. The White House reached out to these Democrats who were aligned with Republicans in pushing this bill forward. Yeah. They said, don't support this bill because it could hurt the Biden family. What are you afraid of? If you didn't accept diamonds, right, a Porsche, right, and money, right, what are you afraid of? For no nefarious reasons, right, Maria? I mean, I think it's really bad because they had 3 Democrats that were actually supporting it that actually retracted their support and said, oh, actually, we can't support this because, and from what I understand, they actually alluded to the fact that it could potentially hurt the Biden administration and the Biden campaign. Well, that's pretty sad if you're not willing to stand for ethics because your current candidate actually could be, but we already know from the Coma report that this has happened. And to your point about Trump, we know that he's the only politician I've ever heard of in American history that has gone into office and left poorer than when he went in it. Mm-hmm. So he did not do what this Biden family has done. Yeah, I mean, they try to equate it, but there's no really moral equivalence at all. It's not the same.
No, it's not.
It's not the same. And I think it's important that you have the conversation, though, because you can't just have this sort of faux outrage without evaluating it all. And I think it's really, there is a huge difference here.
Yeah. All right, let's take a short break. Make sure to catch my new Fox Nation special on China, Underwriting the Enemy. It begins streaming tomorrow, and we will have more on that coming up this morning on this new Fox Nation special. We're just getting started this hour. Quick break, and then markets are closed on this Juneteenth holiday, but we're still seeing green so far this year, and we're zeroing in on the winners on Wall Street, including NVIDIA. Lafler Tengler Investments CEO Nancy Tengler is here on what's driving the momentum in stocks. Then Boeing officials admit they retaliated against whistleblowers who called attention to errors in the production process. The highlights from the congressional testimony right here coming up. Don't miss that. You're watching Mornings with Maria live on Fox Business. We'll be right back. For a lot of years now. Yeah. Eureka.
Oh my gosh. It's well, you know, to know after Lion Air crash and then to still make the call and then to have another incident. I mean, I can see why it could lead to criminal charges.
Yeah. Real quick, according to Senator Blumenthal, there's more than a dozen whistleblowers. So the story is not over for Boeing at all.
All right. We'll watch it. Cheryl, thank you.
You bet.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Maria, it used to be, I'm never going to say that voting is not important. It's always important. But it used to be, oh, this guy will cut my taxes. This guy will raise my taxes. It was kind of, that was the American way, you know. We're talking about a president who rescinded executive orders, canceled the Remain in Mexico policy, has let 10 million people get in, and people are dying. I am so tired of waking up and reading about a young girl getting raped in this country. This has got to stop. And stop lying to our face and telling us that what is happening in front of us is not actually happening, that you're not playing politics.
It's really, it's maddening. I understand. Meanwhile, there's all the cognitive issues. President Biden appeared to freeze up again, and he actually, we think, forgot the name of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas during a White House Dreamers event. Don't take my word for it. Let's watch it together. Here it is.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband. Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure I'm going to introduce you all the way. But all kidding aside, Secretary Mayorkas.
What was that?
He forgot. There's no doubt. I will also say there have been, in fairness, I can't believe I'd actually come to Joe Biden's defense. There are times I've, too, gotten tongue-tied. We all have. But yeah, that's just uncomfortable. The problem is it's not just one example. It's example after example. It's tripping going up the stairs on Air Force One. You know, what is it now, 5 times? It's not knowing where to stand at Omaha Beach. It's not knowing where to stand Saturday night at the fundraiser. It's losing his train of thought over and over again. It's not just one time where we've got, everyone's allowed to kind of, get lost one time, but not this many times. And not when you're the leader of the free world.
Those videos, first of Giorgia Meloni taking him back into the group when he was on the ground in Italy, and then at the fundraiser with Obama, where Obama walked him off stage.
Right.
you have to wonder, is Joe Biden about to walk out stage left? I mean, I don't know. Is he going to make this election, or is he going to have to withdraw? The Democrats clearly want him to withdraw. I think it's pretty obvious, the fact that Obama has his hand on him, walking him off stage the other day. That, for me, I thought.
Or are they just all running cover for him?
Can we see the video, since we're talking about
Piers
that?
Morgan came out and said after that this means he's not fit to be president. And, he's on the left. So, I mean, I think if you have left-handed media commentators now saying this means you're unfit for office, that's what it shows. Well, it's getting ridiculous.
I think it's important. Like 30% of them, only 30% of Americans think that he's fit to serve another term. Only 30%. And yet he's getting 49% in the polls. We were just talking about this. So that means 20% of people don't think he's fit, and yet are still giving him the benefit of the doubt. And that's because of some of these issues that are really important to voters. And think about that for a minute. 30%, so that means 20% are saying, I would rather have an incompetent person run the country than the alternative.
Selfish. They're all worried about their grip on power. They're not thinking about the rest of America. I mean, how else can you see it?
It's fascinating.
Or you're just a diehard Dem and you're going to vote Dem no matter what.
Right. Selfish. We're just getting started this hour. Quick break, and then Amazon is facing a large fine from the state of California for not complying with new labor laws. We're going to get into that, and the word on Wall Street will get that expectation for Amazon and tech as well. Then the debate is coming up. The countdown is on, 8 days away to the first presidential showdown. The Republican National Committee Co-Chair Lara Trump is here this morning at 8 a.m. Don't miss her. You're watching Mornings with Maria live on Fox Business. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time for the word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now is Payne Capital Management President and the host of Payne Points of Wealth podcast, Ryan Payne, back with us. Also with us this morning is Rebecca Walser and Adam Johnson. Great to see you, Ryan. Thanks for joining the conversation. Adam and Rebecca, we've been chatting all morning this morning. Take a look at futures this morning. On this holiday for the markets, closed for the Juneteenth holiday, the S&P 500 at another fresh record close yesterday. Ryan, NVIDIA surpassing Microsoft and Apple in market value. Now the most valuable company in the world, NVIDIA. Take a look at the stock year to date. As we see, the NASDAQ was up yesterday, but the whole market was really lifted by these chip stocks. Ryan, NVIDIA's chart that's a beautiful chart. Isn't that a beautiful chart?
And I think it's no coincidence that Adam's got an even nicer pocket square than usual this morning, because I know he owns NVIDIA, and he's been raking it in.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It is now worth $3.33 trillion, just above Microsoft at $3.31 trillion. And, kind of the drum I've been beating here is it's starting to look a lot like the late 90s, early 2000. And symbolically, back then, Cisco surpassed Microsoft as the number one company in the S&P 500. And at that time, they were kind of the backbone of this whole, data and, basically fueling the internet at that time, just the way today AI is being fueled by these chips by NVIDIA. So the question is,
I think it's a good analogy.
I think it's a real analogy, but using that analogy, it could get crazier here, and price get a lot higher. Remember, I always say Cisco actually topped out 200 times forward earnings. What are you moving on, like 50 times forward earnings now on
it's trading right now at 45 times earnings forward.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure you're checking it every second.
Let's see where it is.
But this also makes me think about, too, is if you look at the S&P 500 on a current PE ratio at 23 times, during the tech bubble, it got to 28 times, which if this mirrors that, and I think history does tend to rhyme, maybe not repeat, we're going to 6,500 on the S&P. And I think that's realistic here. I think, we talked about this before, but the Fed most likely will at least cut once this year. I see this with lots of clients walking in the door. They're sitting with way too much money in cash. We get that $6 trillion in cash. At some point, if you see your 5% rate go down, where's that money going to go? It's going to go to the hottest part of the market where all the momentum is, and that's a lot of these big mega cap AI names like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, which could just fuel this rally a lot higher.
Maybe, but some people just leave their money in money market accounts. And they may say, okay, rates are going down, but I'm not going to move it.
Greed's a very powerful persuader in my career when it comes to investing.
It's hard to know which tech stock to buy because of these outsized gains already. I mean, look at Amazon, for example, Adam. California is fining Amazon $6 million, nearly $6 million, for failing to disclose warehouse employee quotas.
Right.
This is a new one. The Golden State creating the law back in 2022 to address concerns they claim, about the e-commerce giant's workplace practices and treatments of its hourly workers. Look at this stock so far this year. Adam, I want to get your take on Amazon. Not as good looking a chart, but nonetheless up over the last year.
I'll take it, and I am long it as well, in full disclosure, as are my clients. I think you have to be long companies like it. Well, the whole Magnificent Seven, I call them core ingenuity, and you have to be long. In terms of what's happening in California, though, there's a lot to unpack here, Maria. Starting with, why is it that California always thinks that it can just determine the rules for the rest of us, from EV mandates to clean air to how companies should treat their workers in the warehouses? I'm tired of California trying to assert its standards on the rest of us. That's point number one. Point number two, what's going on here is that they're saying you have to tell people what the standards are. You can't just have the standards and then penalize them for not meeting the standards. I will grant that is a fair point, but let's just get government out of the workplace as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. We'll see where this goes in terms of it's just like the beginning of more attacks on the company. And certainly, look, California, like New York, is desperate for money.
Desperate.
I mean, they're going to look under every rock.
Yeah.
So,
track every mile.
There's that as well. As we look at the price of just about everything up over the last year, take a look at oil prices this morning, Rebecca, because I know you say you're looking at this non-renewal of the U.S. and Saudi Arabia 50-year petrodollar agreement, the G7 approving confiscation of $300 billion of Russia's forex reserves in U.S. and European banks. How do these international disruptions impact markets? Walk us through what happened here with the U.S.-Saudi petrodollar pact ending.
It's such a dichotomy between micro, which is those companies are doing great in the AI revolution, which I agree with, and I'm a bull on that. However, macroeconomically, the United States is the weakest it's been in 50 years because on June 9th, our petrodollar agreement expired with Saudi Arabia that was put into place in 1974, and it was not renewed. So when we went off the gold standard, Maria, to make a long story short, we went off the gold standard in 71. Basically, we started having massive inflation. We had the oil embargo. We had all these things happening. So Nixon sent Kissinger over to meet with the King of Saudi Arabia, and they agreed, hey, you only get your OPEC nations to sell oil in dollars, called the petrodollar, and we'll provide you security through our military. And the petrodollar agreement with the U.S. and Saudi Arabia was born. When we kicked Russia out of SWIFT in 2022, and they aligned themselves, and the BRICS bloc has done so much, basically, they've now confiscated, and it's a loan. The U.S. wanted to confiscate all $300 billion, but Europe has most of the assets, so Europe is actually the one that told America, no, we're not going to do that. But what we'll do is we'll loan the earnings, and we'll loan the earnings. So basically, we do not have something backing our currency anymore. There's no asset backing of our currency, and we are now confiscating countries that we don't agree with their geopolitical moves. Yeah. So this could be the demise of the dollar, and de-dollarization is happening very fast.
This sounds very disturbing to me. I know that China and Russia are hoping that they can come up with a replacement to the U.S. dollar. I never thought that was actually possible.
Yeah, it's going to happen because of the crypto technology with the blockchain and the Enbridge that the BRICS nations have come up with. You don't need it.
All right.
Need a reserve.
Ryan, thanks very much for being here. Any thoughts on that? Did you want to jump in?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Weaponizing dollar was a big mistake, and you're starting to see a lot of emerging markets now are using their own currencies for a lot of transactions outside the U.S. Yeah. It's a big problem for sure. It concerns me too, Rebecca.
Thanks for coming in. Ryan Payne, always a pleasure. Rebecca and Adam, you're with us all morning, and we're grateful. More to come. A quick break, and then one sanctuary city reportedly sending migrants to Salt Lake City. Utah Congressman Burgess Owens is here to tell us firsthand how border policies have impacted his home state. After the break, you're watching Mornings with Maria live.
Percent under Joe Biden's presidency. Currently, unemployment, that does sit at 4%. The rate, and then year over year, the last read on CPI was 3.3%. But not to put a finer point on this, but you see the messaging, right? We're seeing it. We saw the campaign put out $50 million, the Biden-Harris campaign. They're now going after Donald Trump, the convicted felon line. And we're seeing now the messaging from people like Rachel Maddow. The economy is great. They're trying to spin the conversation and get away from the unedited video that has been seen over and over on both of our networks, Maria.
And even the argument that the economy is so great has incredible holes in it because, first of all, when you look at the unemployment numbers, a lot of the jobs are going to non-citizens, and a lot of the jobs are part-time.
Yeah.
So is she aware of that? And by the way, how do you look at an economy without looking at inflation?
Right. Well,
inflation is cut into everybody's wages. Real wages are going down.
Exactly.
How do you look at an economy without looking at consumer confidence, without looking at people's optimism, without talking to the American people? 70% of them say it's not good. How do you I mean, you're trying to gaslight the American people and say the economy has never been better, and yet that's not their reality, and it's not working. It doesn't work when Joe Biden says it, and it doesn't work when Rachel Maddow says it.
And
You can't tell us our experience isn't real.
To even have this discussion without looking at the wide open border. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The border has an impact to everything, and the crime spikes that we're seeing.
Yes, and Maria, you know, I'm a numbers guy. I love numbers. Numbers tell the story. The misery index is the unemployment rate plus inflation. Unemployment is 4%. Inflation is 3.3. Add them together, that's 7.3. Guess what the tipping point is for presidents who are trying to get reelected? 7.3. So for all Ms. Maddow's spin about how wonderful Joe Biden is, the misery index is at the point at which historically incumbent presidents do not get reelected.
But you heard, Cheryl, they got the directive.
Right.
They got the directive from the White House. Rachel Maddow's going with the directive that she's been told.
The problem is to Lee's point, you cannot experience something yourself, see it with your own eyes, taste it with your own mouth, feel it with your own pocketbook, and then be told by Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, everything's fine, this is great. And by the way, I just want to qualify her statement. We are the envy of the world because we are the world's reserve currency. And Biden's policies and all of these things that have happened, and really his appeasement to China, has led to the de-dollarization and kicking out Russia out of SWIFT, has led to the de-dollarization that we are now going to experience. We brought it upon ourselves, America. Get prepared, because we have not experienced this in over 70 years, 50 years for real.
I do want to make a point, Maria. We talked about this yesterday on the program, that even the Washington Post, who I guess the editorial section didn't get the memo, there is a headline, and it says, Joe Biden could lose the presidency on inflation. And it's a deep dive into why inflation is likely going to be his downfall in November.
And I would add, yes, we were the envy of the world for a long time.
Right.
I don't know that that's true anymore. A lot of people overseas are looking at America and they're underwhelmed. They're underwhelmed, given what's going on right now. Cheryl, thank you. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we've got the hot topic of the hour right here. Stay with us. We'll be right back. One part of me says I like this idea, no, but then again, I want the kids to be able to reach their parents in an emergency. Lee, how do you see it?
Well, I think it's really an important conversation that we're having right now, because cell phones are having a huge impact on our kids' lives, and it's not to the advantage of learning. It's not to the advantage of, it's certainly not helping their mental health. And so the question is, what do we do about it? Do we say, yes, let's ban it in schools, take control out of parents' hands and put it into the schools more? I think that's one way that we could do it. The other way is we've got to be more aware of what's going on with our kids' lives, because it's not just cell phones that are happening in schools. I have a stepson who's in college, and in high school he had a MacBook, and on his laptop all day long, the messages are popping up even though he doesn't have his phone. He's not allowed to have his phone. He has homework, but he has access to the internet. He has access to all those same things.
So it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So what is the problem we're going after? And I think that's really what we've got to go after. We've got to really address the root cause here. Yes, a ban sounds good, because I don't want my kids on their phone at school either.
Right.
But what's really going on? What's going to help their mental health? What kind of behaviors do we really need to address? That's what we need to look at more broadly. I think a ban is an easy fix. The real systemic problem we have to look at more deeply.
I think anything that helps us focus our energy, concentrate the firepower is a favorite concept of mine. I think anything that helps us do that is generally speaking a positive. I think getting rid of cell phones in a classroom is a positive. It helps you focus on what's actually happening at that moment. As for being able to reach a parent in an emergency, what is the 1 in 10 million, probability of that happening? And presumably that's why there are teachers and security officers, et cetera, in a school.
But I mean, the schools are coming between the parent and their child on so many instances. That's why I'm a little taken aback, saying, okay, well, wait, let's think this out, because we need the child and the parent to be able to communicate. And like with all this transgender stuff,
right,
and doing stuff without the parent knowing, it's not, it's uncomfortable. Meanwhile, there's this, Dr. Anthony Fauci admitting that closing schools for such a long time during the pandemic was a mistake. Watch.
I kept on saying, close the bars, open the schools as quickly and as safely as you possibly can. But initially, to close it down was correct.
I'm not talking about initially.
Keeping it for a year was not a good idea.
So that was a mistake in retrospect. We will not repeat it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right. He admitted it, Rebecca.
It's good that he was able to swallow his pride and say, yeah, that was not good. I mean, I've seen him do nothing but defend his policies, and I think atrociously so. So I'm impressed that he finally copped to something that he didn't handle correctly.
Your thoughts on cell phone?
I think that you need to have them at the school in the locker where they're accessible to reach a parent in emergency, but not during the classroom.
Yeah. Fauci?
Fauci's covering his tracks and trying to protect his legacy.
Yeah.
That's my view.
Yeah. Sure, you're right. Fair. Right, we're just getting started this hour. We've got a lot coming up. Former President Trump is vowing to eliminate taxes on tips for service industry workers if he wins re-election. Montana Senator Steve Daines is here with more on that potential legislation. Don't miss it. You're watching Mornings with Maria live on Fox Business. We'll be right back.